Okay. Thanks a lot, Yario, that most of the people are still here. Unfortunately, we have to do a spontaneous podium because Arnold Farr was not able to come, and we had in our mind to have a last discussion about Marcuse and critical theory in the evening. So, and Arnold Farr was a very important person for that, but now we make a kind of spontaneous action. Maybe it's good in the sense of Herbert Marcuse and the old Sponti tradition here in Frankfurt to be a little bit spontaneous. What I want to mention, some of you didn't hear that Hamas attacked Israel. We showed some pictures here, in one picture with the headlines from the Washington Post, which is a big problem right now. Netanyahu called it, we are in a war, wir sind in einem Krieg, and I hope that there is some solidarity with Israel, and of course I will say Netanyahu is not my best friend, and no, and it's not against the Palestinians, but it's for the people in Israel, and not for defending Netanyahu's government. I want to make that very clear, okay, but anyway. Yes, so the spontaneous situation is the following. We invited for the podium, it's Terry. We will say a little bit again about the society and the conference, and Sarah Zuak, why we do something about critical pedagogy so long. So we have in the Marcuse Society a big group of critical pedagogy. Charles Reitz is here to mention, and she will bring that on the top. And then we have our hosts here. I invited them, very spontaneous, because I'm very proud. I studied here in Frankfurt, and I'm very proud that here still some fossils, young fossils, they're still alive, they are not from stone, who are working with critical theory. And I think it's just a recognition for them to say some words for the last session here. And of course, I invited Sriyoshi because I think it's very important for us to get more involved in the South, Mexico, and for example, India. I know her father since, I don't know, 20 years. Yeah, since 20 years, and I thank you very much that you agree to be part of the new Spontis in Frankfurt, which makes me very proud. And last but not least, Harold Marcuse, which I don't have to introduce because everybody knows him. So everybody from us give a short statement, and then Harold and I will close the conference to give the last words. So let's start with Terry. It's yours. And of course, you can, if you have comments on it, feel free to ask after it. Okay, Terry.
Yes, thanks, Peter Irwin, and hi everybody, and thanks for hanging in and coming back to this kind of closing session at the end of this year's conference. I just wanted to say a couple of things, kind of spontaneously. There's a lot of organized spontaneity going on, right? and that's very Marcusean in a sense. But the conference, I found, just personally, the conference once again, as all the conferences that I've been to thus far since 2015, when I went to my first one at Salisbury that Sarah organized in Maryland, have all been similar, and yet they're all new and different each time. They're similar in the sense that there's just a fantastic array and range of presentations, themes, papers, etc. One of the things I mentioned in my brief opening remarks, or not so brief perhaps, opening remarks the other day on Thursday, was that there's a kind of exercise in retrieval going on with regard to a rediscovery of Marcuse and a reinvigoration of Marcuse studies. And I certainly saw that at many of the panels, in fact, all of the panels I went to here as well, that I was able to attend. So I certainly appreciate the work that's going on in terms of recovering Marcuse's legacy, going back, looking at his early work, his later work, his better known work, works such as One-Dimensional Man and its current relevance for discussing things like and making sense of things like neoliberalism, and what's going on in the Global South as well, and the relationship of critical theory and Marcusean critical theory specifically to the Global South. All of those dimensions were covered. I thought briefly that the keynote speakers were fantastic as well. I appreciated the talks on feminism, on other theoretical traditions, on the talk on NGOs in the Global South too. They were all, I thought, right on point, and very different, of course, in their relationship to Marcuse as well, but all part of the tapestry that these conferences weave differently, the quilt or tapestry that they weave at every conference, at every session. I just wanted to say something that I forgot to say, one last thing that I forgot to mention in my opening remarks on Thursday, and that is I want to give a shout out to Peter Irwin, not just for organizing the conference as a whole, which is a big task and a big job, which Inca helped too. Inca, sorry, I didn't see there. Inca and other people, but Inca, Engel, Peter Irwin as well. That's right. Thanks, Sarah. But particularly because Peter Irwin adds a dimension. I don't want to single him out too much, but he adds a dimension to the Marcuse conferences with his connection to the archives and with it's kind of professional training in a sense, which we sometimes, you know, as philosophical as Marcuse can be, or as political as he can be, and we all get caught up in those discussions and panels, and that's kind of what we come for. There's an important professional dimension and a research dimension that Peter Irwin provides, as well as his commentary and his insights, etc. And I just wanted to give him a special shout out for that. And Inca, that's right. One of the most popular sessions at the 2017 conference that I organized at York University with a number of graduate students and others was the session that Peter Irwin had from the archives. And people were just fascinated by it. And it adds a whole other layer and dimension apart from the, you know, in addition to the papers, and just enriches the whole experience further. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Thanks very much. And now I'll pass it on to Sarah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all for coming and attending and presenting fantastic papers. I'm just going to speak a moment to this idea of critical pedagogy, which was something we very intentionally included within the conference, both within its own track, but also generally. A lot of people within the Marcuse Society have for years been thinking about critical pedagogy and what is a critical education. I think in these times we can say, not that it's necessarily more important than ever, but as we look at democracies across the world, as we look at sort of what's going on, global north, global south, everywhere, we need to be thinking about critical education in a really substantive way. In that, I would like to encourage everybody to think about, you know, Marcuse from that perspective. Peter Erwin, which I'll give another shout out, always asks, why are we still talking about Marcuse? Like every time we're going to meet, is he out of date? Like, do we still need to be thinking about him in these ways? And from the perspective of critical education and critical pedagogy, I would say absolutely. Whilst we've been talking this week about how some things have changed since 1964, since 1970, 1972, et cetera, now more than ever, we do need to be thinking about what he was calling for and how he encouraged us to think that we aren't actually in a democracy. We need to critique the sorts of systems that we're in, and that education is really focused on reproducing the system we're in, which is one of oppression, which is one of racism, which is characterized by all these sorts of things that we as Marcusean scholars are trying to move beyond, to throw off, to go into this other sort of place. And Marcuse also, within a critical pedagogy, gives us a vision for a better place. Sylvia and I have all these conversations about how we're so tired of talking about like all of these bad things that are happening in the world, and we want to be visioning more utopia. We want to vision utopia so we can think about it, so we can move towards it, so that we can work towards this sort of project. Not that we don't need to critique the present, but we also need to be thinking about the kind of world we want to live in much more concrete ways. And I think Marcuse helps us do all of that. And I would encourage everyone within the room to be thinking about that sort of lived pedagogy, not just in the formal institutions that Marcuse wrote about in the university, which we're all involved in, but also in the non-formal or informal or adult education or other sorts of spaces where we produce and reproduce the lives that we live. And I hope we can think about ways to produce and reproduce a new form of democracy, or a more enhanced or a more real form of democracy in that way. To that end, I do want to give 2 shout-outs to where we hope you think about submitting your work from this conference. It was fantastic to attend all of these panels. Like other conferences, we will again collect conference papers and put them into an edited volume. I know the edited volume from the Arizona State Conference is coming out. It's out? It's out. But it's not, is it printed? Okay, it is out. Terry and Robert can speak to that, but we've been trying to collect these together because they provide a sense of a particular moment in which our conferences are coming together in ways. Who am I? Okay, yeah. Anyways, one of the emails you did receive, and I'm sure you'll receive again, was the information about submitting. They'll be publishing some of the papers from this conference by January 2nd. You can send them to the website. I don't know what I'm looking at. You keep pointing at something. It's like hard to see up here. Anyways, I'm sorry whomever I'm talking over, but interrupt me. Is okay? Yeah. So those will be collected there. I also want to give my own shout out to something that Alexander and I and Kenneth Rosen are working on. Well, I'm coming along with them, but they are the brains behind all of this. We have a call for contributions against one-dimensionality, pedagogy, the political, and prefiguration, a word we've been talking about a lot this conference, in Marcuse, and really thinking about the pedagogy of and in Marcuse, education as an object of critique, and social work, counter-hegemony, and prefiguration. And there's really interesting interplays between what it means for social work in your own particular national context, which is complex and really interesting in terms of the role that social work can play in education, can play in empowering or in helping to provide sources and resources for people to do the democracy that they want to see on the ground level in these sorts of ways. So with that, thank you for giving me a few minutes to pitch both of these projects. We hope you consider sending your papers in, and I hope that you also consider this role that we can all play within a critical pedagogy inspired by Marcuse. Thank you.
Obviously, I look forward to submitting and participating in that. But the question I think Peter sort of fielded towards me was the importance of critical theory in individuals from another culture or within another culture or country. And I think it is absolutely crucial. I mean, from my own culture that I can speak of, I reside in America, but I have also resided much of my life in India, so I dance between both these cultures and countries. But there is a strong culture of critical theory within India. I invite everyone to read the works of Gayatri Spivak, who was very pioneering in feminist theory regarding the subaltern. I invite you to read Ramachandra Guha, who spoke about historic relevance in critical theory and how understanding our histories help us understand where we are today and why things are the way they are. But beyond that, as I have mentioned in my presentation, there are certain motivating factors in a racket theory, seduction to symmetry, that fear of missing out that motivates us to become uber consumers and play right into the desires of corporates and associated bodies. And that is definitely something that is within the Indian culture. Every single, whether it's spiritual, religious, cultural activity you can imagine of in my country has become a playground for capitalist motivation. There is no religious festival that does not have a million reasons why you need to buy a million. If you don't, you're missing out. So critical theory has an absolute place in my culture, especially if we consider the transitionary period that India is right now. You could say that it is entering a sort of, some people could say it more clearly, I'll be careful, but it is entering a authoritarian regime, authoritarian state, and it's very important that we are critical. And it can be dangerous to be critical in my country, as it can be anywhere. But I think that if we speak, if we gather as we have here today, we can have an impact in every single culture we're part of. An individual who spoke yesterday, Mr. Daniel Sernalugi, I believe I'm pronouncing his name right, he spoke about how we need individuals, we need the youth, of course, to speak out. We need individuals of all cultures, whether they're queer identities, everyone to speak out. And I think that's very important. I am a youth. I mean, I was a toddler during the first Marcuse conference. My father was there and I wasn't, because I was still learning how to speak. But I'm here today, and I'm here today maybe because of my father, but maybe because of the timeless nature of what is within the writings of Marcuse, what is within the Frankfurt School of Philosophy, because I'm not here because solely of my dad, but because I actually enjoy and I believe in what has been written in therein, and I think it is timeless. I think we should still be talking about Marcuse, because one of the areas that I publish and talk about is classical philosophy, pre-Socratics, Plato, you name it. And we still talk about them thousands of years later. So there's no reason why we can't talk about Herbert Marcuse. It's just, last decade. Some people are still alive from that time. So it's absolutely, he spoke about an America that was changing. He spoke about America that was rife with so many movements. And it's much like today. So he still has a place today. The Frankfurt School of Philosophy has a place today. Critical theory has an absolute place today in every realm, in every culture. And that's why I invite all of us to gather in my city of Kolkata. It's a city with a long history of philosophy, literature, cultural movements, straight up Marxist movements, leftist movements. So I think we do need to. I guess I would say we've talked about the global south. We need to talk about the global east, because India is still pretty north. It's above the equator. So, but we need to. We need to talk about the global east, and the global east needs to talk about critical theory. So.
All right, thanks for the spontaneous invitation. I will try to give some very, very short impressions from, let's say, a student perspective on learning about critical theory today, and especially in Frankfurt. By giving an experience, when I started to study in Frankfurt, I was attending a course on Foucault, and the first text we read, and actually one of the first texts I read in university in general, was I think something out of Eros and Civilization, but the point was only to read it so we could criticize it afterwards with Foucault. And after that, a few semesters, my impression was this is some old critical theory, and the new critical theory must be Foucault, Derrida, or other postmodern, or let's say post-structuralist theory. And I needed a little bit time to realize that there are some fundamental differences between these theories, and then you just can't put them in some sort of history of critical theory from the old to the new. At least in my opinion. The circumstances for, as I experience this, for critical theory or social sciences is getting worse since universities and sciences getting a lot under pressure, but at the same time, those critical theories that are out there also, in a lot of times don't want to know anything anymore about the Frankfurt School. So it's under attack actually from a lot of sides, I think, and it's important to note and to hold on, even though it might seem a conservative move to talk about Marcuse and his theories all the time again, but I think it's important to preserve some of those ideas without reshaping them in front of a different social situation. And to be able to criticize newer theories that call themselves even critical theory with the old theories. I think that's a task that I think is important, and why I think it's important to talk about Marcuse today. And Nick can maybe add some words about this.
Yes, this might pose the question, what is critical theory? And there are a lot of notions about that. And what I am thinking, what is the essence of critical theory, is that what Horkheimer described in traditional and critical theory, that there has to be a theory that is self-reflective in the sense that it has a truth in it that has a time core, the time core that can be abolished, and with that the theory is also abolished, that you don't need the theory when capitalism, for example, is abolished. So that's why I don't want to read Marcuse in 1,000 years, because then capitalism would still be there. And I would hope that we can read something else then. That would be a dream, maybe. And I think Marcuse was also in this project involved, in the sense that he showed in Errors in Civilization, or wanted to find a historically specific theory, and also Moishe Postone, who I would also think that they are in the same project. And he had this concept of labor as a historically specific mediation, which also can be abolished. And he also always pointed out that when capitalism is abolished, that his theory doesn't apply anymore. And I think both of these thinkers, or all of the critical theory, is against pessimism, in the sense when it searches for something historically specific, because when something is not historically specific, then you can't do anything about it. And that leads, unfortunately, to pessimism. So I think it's a good theory to fight this pessimism, be it in left theories or also right, like, I don't know, Spengler or something like this. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to say a few words sort of looking forward about the conference and future such gatherings. And take Thomas Gebauer's words this morning about how institutions or NGOs arise from social movements, and in some ways the Herbert Marcuse Conference, the International Herbert Marcuse Society, and now in Germany the Herbert Marcuse Leo Löwenthal Association, e.V., as the Germans call it, are two institutions that try to establish continuity for people who are thinking and wrestling with these ideas and trying to make a better society. So on the one hand, I would invite everyone. Tomorrow we're going to have a meeting of the core members of these societies who put together conferences like this, who have fellowships for scholarship and for attendance and publications, to come here at 10 tomorrow morning and think about how we want to use these institutions to promote these ideas, critical thought, critical pedagogy, evolve consciousness, and deal with the technological developments that are coming today. So one thing, everyone is invited to come tomorrow and to become involved in these two organizations. I don't know if there's a membership fee or anything for the Marcuse Löwenthal. I think Germans require that, or yeah. But they're nominal. And really get involved and help us with your thought to press on with these things. I note that this is the first conference where sort of the older guard, the scholars who knew Herbert personally, like Doug Kellner and Andy Feenberg, are not actually present. And so it's now, and my father as well, it's now fallen on the shoulders of some of us who are already somewhat advanced in years, and it's really up to even younger scholars and activists to pick up the baton and move it forward. So that's one invitation for everyone. Peter, Erwin, and I have made a fun thing so a dialogue between Herbert Marcuse and Leo Löwenthal to read to you, and we'll explain afterwards what that's all about. So just to sort of give us a little concluding impulse about the current moment and what's going on.
All right. Herbert, I'm Leo. Herbert, it's yours.
Leo, it's been a while. How have you been?
Oh, Herbert, good to see you. I have been immersed in some thoughts about our society, particularly this emerging consumer culture. It's troubling.
Indeed, Leo, the consumer society is becoming more entrenched, shaping not just our economic systems, but our very way of life. It's as if everything is reduced to a commodity.
And technology is killing us right now.
Killing us.
Herbert, it's good that you have such a... Pardon?
Mouse pad, okay.
It's good that you have such a good technology critique in your one-dimensional man. I see it again, and yeah. Okay. That's precisely my concern. The commodification of everything, ever our personal experiences. We are witnessing a society that's not just about producing goods, but consuming them, defining ourselves through what we buy.
And it's not just about the act of consumption. It's about the very nature of desires. Yeah, really. Okay.
There.
It's about the very nature of desires being manufactured. The industry not only provides goods, but also molds our desires and aspirations, creating a false sense of needs.
Absolutely, Herbert. This manipulation of desires is what troubles me deeply. It's not just the act of buying, it's a shaping of our wants, often in ways that serve the interests of those in power.
It's a form of social control, Leo. People are kept satisfied, or at least distracted, by the constant pursuit of material goods. This way, critical thought is stifled, and the masses remain within the confines of a predetermined, controlled reality.
I can't help but think about the impact on culture and individuality. Everything becomes standardized, makes people standardized, designed for mass communication. The uniqueness, consumption, the uniqueness of local cultures is eroded, and people are homogenized into consumers with uniform tastes.
You've touched on a crucial point. The homogenization of culture serves the interests of those in power, as it makes people more predictable and controllable. Genuine individuality is sacrificed for the sake of mass conformity.
And now? And what about the role of technology in all this? Exactly. The mass media, it was organized. The mass media, for instance, plays a significant role in disseminating these manufactured desires and creating a collective consciousness.
Technology has become a powerful tool in the hands of those who control it. Mass media not only shapes desires, but also controls the narratives people are exposed to. It's a mechanism of social engineering, reinforcing the status quo.
It seems like we're caught in the cycle, Herbert. The more people consume, the more they become entrenched in the system. Breaking free from it becomes a formidable challenge.
It is a challenge, Leo, but not an insurmountable one. Awareness is the first step. We need to make people aware of the forces at play, encourage critical thinking, and foster alternatives that prioritize genuine human needs over manufactured desires.
Perhaps, Herbert. But the grip of consumer society is strong. It's going to take a concerted effort to create a shift in consciousness.
True, Leo, but as long as there are individuals who resist, who question, who strive for a more authentic way of life, there's hope for change.
Thanks a lot that you're here. We are
So the interesting thing about this dialogue is that we didn't write it. We asked ChatGPT a question, or we gave it a prompt, write a dialogue between Herbert Marcuse and Leo Löwenthal about consumer society and mass society. And one of the things I want to point out, so one of the big issues that we came up with, that we've been addressing in this conference is technology has this dialectical potential. It can be used as an instrument of control, but it can also be liberatory, be emancipatory. So the question is, what does one do with a dialogue like this? It basically takes the texts that are posted on the internet, basically, and combines them in some artificially intelligent, algorithmic way and produces a dialogue, and it does a pretty good job of that and summarizes what's out there. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't give agency to the individuals who write those texts and who take these words and who move them forward. And so it summarizes what's out there, but it doesn't move beyond that. And I think that's really where human intelligence and human creativity come into play. We need to write our texts. We need to add them to the corpus that artificial intelligence can churn through, and so that it can take us a step forward. And so in a way, artificial intelligence can be used to create an institution, to sort of create a basis from which we can evolve our thoughts further. So I don't know if anyone has any comments on that. We tried a number of other dialogues. So in the feminism panel, one of the questions that arose was, why hadn't Herbert Marcuse read Simone de Beauvoir? And so one can ask ChatGPT to write a critique by Simone de Beauvoir of Herbert Marcuse's Marxism and feminism. So you can ask questions like this. You can see what the existing texts out there by Beauvoir and Marcuse can yield in a very vanilla kind of way, and take it from there, and then look at the text. So I think it's good. It provides us with a starting point in this use of technology and artificial intelligence. So we can think of it as it takes jobs away, it's going to promote capitalism, it can do this, but it can also help thinkers develop their thoughts even more deeply. And I, as a college professor and an educator, think a lot about, my students are using it already, how can I get them to use it as a tool to increase their critical thought potential, to evolve their own thoughts further, and not just as something to answer dumb prompts that thousands of students have answered before them. So I don't know if we want to have a brief discussion, if people have comments about it.
I just want to say that I'm relieved to know that you didn't write that, because when we can see somehow, I think it's a problem, that if we can't make a differentiation, because it is a big cliche actually, dialogue. It is a big cliche. So actually, what does the ChatGPT puts as a problem to us? Okay, we should at least try to write not as ChatGPT, and I mean to make an extra effort to make something against reified language. This is reified language. This is just even critical theory can become a cliche. Actually, that's the thing.
Yeah, thanks. Want to react on it?
Anyone else? So really, there is no original thought in it. It is a summary of of cliches, of what's out there.
Thanks. Maybe one way to address this is to make new connections that intersections that don't currently exist, like you mentioned, de Beauvoir and Marxism. Yeah. So this takes creativity and human thought.
And to have, for instance, a de Beauvoir scholar look at the dialogue that's produced in that way and say, no, 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 that isn't what she would have said. Someone who really knows more deeply and doesn't just regurgitate randomly, in some sense, existing thought.
No, I think that the usage for pedagogy of technology is good only for a, I don't know, cognitive sense, a cognitive side. But my experience is that teaching is all but the cognitive side. It's more affective. I don't know, it's more emotional. It's the language of a body, the tone of a speech. So I don't know how much technology can be helpful to work on this side too, which are the main sides you transmit contents. It is not transmitted by language, but by other kind of languages. So we should also to think how technology could be useful for this side of, for instance, education.
Absolutely, the human side is really, really important in making human connections. That's why I think it's very, very important to gather together at a conference like this and have meaningful human exchanges. Anyone else? Okay.
Sorry. So of course I don't suggest we go all Luddite or Ted Kaczynski on technology. Of course it has benefits and it has helped us. And of course AI should and can be used for good. And as Mr. Marcuse mentioned, of course students are using it and we should try not to. But I think a conversation that I've had with my father, Dr. Gaucheray, is that it is a big, it does have a big effect on creativity. At the end of the day, it is not able to replace. And the biggest thing is revolutions for production have always happened. The Industrial Revolution, technology revolution sort of in the 90s and 2000s, the digital revolution, and now the AI revolution, right? But we don't have systems in place, we don't have protections in place. So there's going to be an abrupt change that no one's ready for, and individuals who are going to be left out, as they have always been from the dawn of time. Advancement is great, but so is protecting people and protecting jobs that affect people's livelihoods. So yes, AI can be used, and that was very interesting. I don't feel too happy for clapping now, simply because it feels in a sort of way of resuscitating those who are not with us. It feels like a, you know, a hallucinatory creation, but it was interesting. And we need to recognize that as a summary, so it's not a lively thing happening. It's like a vivisection. We actually need a living conversation to happen. And so yeah, AI can be used, but we're not ready. I don't think we all as a society are ready to make sure that we're protected.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the statements. Unfortunately, we run out of time again, and it's my privilege to say thank you for everybody, and I have a lot of excuses to do as a part of the organization, and I want, for example, that the Institute visit is not, could not happen, but I hope that Matthias Jehn, I don't want to forget him, because I think it was a very interesting lecture he gave in the Archive Centrum, and so I hope you get something from this. And it's my privilege to thank Inka Engel. Inka.